Good morning. I'm glad that we can be here today on the second day of the Diocesan Convention. And even if it's a virtual gathering, it certainly is good to be together. Some of you may not know me. I'm Terry Hayduck. I am the Canon for Clergy Resources and Support and the Transitions Officer for the Diocese of Utah. And Bishop Scott asked me to speak with you today about a new diocesan offering. It's called Sacred Ground. Sacred Ground is a resource from the National Church that leads us into a dialogue about race and faith. It's a 10-part film-based series that helps us explore other people's experience of the Episcopal Church throughout time and throughout our history. It helps us listen to voices that we don't often get to hear, either because we're not in an area where there's diversity as wide as the diversity of the church, or because we've been in our own culture, in our own parishes, in our own way of being. This series is an effort to help us understand a way forward. How do we continue to be the beloved community that God calls us to be? And during this time, this really crazy time of COVID, of this pandemic, if nothing else, we have learned that we're able to change, that we're able to be creative, that we're able to understand not only our vulnerability, but the vulnerability of others, and we're able to be in this together. At the beginning of the COVID crisis, the bishop called the clergy in charge to a weekly meeting. We continue to do that every week. And in that meeting, one of the great learnings, apart from just getting to know one another better because we talk to one another more regularly, what we've learned is that although we said we're in it together, we're feeling that we're in it together, that we are able to support one another with great creative ideas and with questions about how-tos and what are other people's experience, so we don't have to chart a new course. It's been very helpful to us because it's also given us a place where we can talk about some of the craziness in our world right now. As I record this, we've just had that terrible windstorm of hurricane-level winds here in Utah that blew out the wildfire smoke that's been hanging, at least in the valley. When the pandemic started, there were earthquakes. I don't know what's next, locust? I'm more concerned about other kinds of things that might get in the way of our moving forward. Some of that is just fear. It's really hard with all that we've had to change and all of the accommodations to all the strangeness, masks and hand washing and distancing for so many people dealing with the disease and trying to educate their kids and work and do all of those things and yet remain safe. But our world isn't safe, and we know that. Wouldn't it be nice if we could be in a bubble like the NBA or the USTA and just seclude ourselves, get into a secluded area and put ourselves aside so that we could just focus on one dimension of our life? But you and I live in a real world, and we have real concerns and real needs. And we also have a desire to live faithfully. We're good people. We're people who love God, who love Jesus, who really want to understand what our part is in this world right now, particularly and generally. The Episcopal Church has always been concerned about justice. It's in our baptismal covenant that we are to seek justice and peace, that we are to respect the dignity of every human being. And this course, the Sacred Ground course, invites us to move from a place of awkwardness and discomfort and frustration and fear and sometimes anger and disillusionment, but to move us from that place to a place that's sacred, to a place where we invite the Spirit to help us listen to one another, to be with one another, to help one another, to navigate the way forward in a way that as we do so, we become the beloved community. The series is a 10-part series, a 10-part series. And this 10-part series will take place over 5 or 6 months, probably twice a month. It'll be at your congregation, or it could be in a diocesan open group. We're doing this so that everyone in the diocese who would like to participate can do so. And there'll be many options, maybe 5 or 6 for people to sign up. Each group, when you gather on a Zoom meeting, will be co-facilitated so that there'll be people in the group that are paying attention to time, but also to the movement of conversation and trying to encourage us to not only share where we are, but also to listen to one another. Prior to each meeting, the curriculum will give you some options for watching videos and film clips, and also some reading to do from chapters in books to blogs or articles that have been published. The whole point in this is to take some time, maybe an hour and a half before the dialogue, to really have a chance to read about, to learn about, to hear from others about their experience in the Episcopal Church, and to help us who may have a very particular experience. Most of us, as white people, we've not experienced what people of color have experienced in our world, but certainly not in the Episcopal Church. And we're asking that we just invite the Spirit into our watching and our reading and into our prayer and then into our conversations with one another. If we could just talk to one another, if we could just share what it is that's the obstacle to becoming beloved community, to living most fully into our baptismal vows. If we can even just come and listen to others and know that we're not alone. This is hard stuff. If it were easy to solve, we would have solved it a long time ago. But this is a journey. This is the journey that we want to take. And again, what COVID's taught us about all that's going on in our health and safety, in our economic life, in our family life, it's taught us that relationships are primary, that our relationship with God and one another gets us through, and not only gets us through, but gets us to a better place. So I invite you to take on this journey. Deacon Allison Desiderio and I have pulled this together at the bishop's asking and have gathered a group of co-facilitators. And there'll be a link on the diocesan website so that you can sign up to be part of one of the groups. And also, if you have any questions, there is an email account called sacredground@episcopal-utah.org, so that if you have specific questions or needs, Allison or I could get back to you and answer those so that you can know when and if you'll join the group. I invite you, this is an invitation, but it's also an opportunity to see where God's grace just might show up and where we might learn more about each other and live more fully into our faith and into our faith journey. So take a leap of faith. Join us. Join one of the groups. Become part of this movement here in the Episcopal Diocese of Utah. Come with us. Come to sacred ground. And let's move forward in God's way, the way of love, into a beloved community. Thanks.